What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bet on Sports. And today, I have the return of the NASCAR Weekly Prediction Series. NASCAR had its last off week of the season this last week, so it's been 2 weeks since we've done an episode. So let's catch up and remind some people what's going on. Part time Heim gets another win. He has 2 wins on the season, which is tied for third most wins in the Cup Series, and he's a part-time driver. Tells you how good 23XI has been, how much speed they're bringing. Maybe he has an advantage because he has more time to prepare for one race, but Corey Heim is that guy. He is that talented, and he already has his first crown jewel victory before going full-time in the Cup Series. And in speaking of Corey Heim, the Heim Hocevar rivalry popped back up again at the Brickyard. It seems like that rivalry is still going strong. It goes back to the Truck Series when they took each other out in the championship race, really before that. And it's been budding ever since. It seems like there's always a confrontation on the track with these two anytime Heim's in a Cup car. And it has me excited for next year. It's two very young, very talented drivers. And I got to be honest. It seems like Heim gets the better of this rivalry. At least it seemed that way so far. I'll be interested to see how long it continues that way. But Corey Heim and Carson Hocevar, Heim blocking Hocevar so he couldn't get around him, and then when Heim finally goes to pit, Hocevar giving him the finger, driving all the way down towards the pit road entry. Quite a fun moment for the fans for sure. It is what Carson Hocevar kind of asked for. He said, "If you want a war, let's war," or whatever the quote was. So going into next season and the rest of Heim's part-time races this season, it ought to be interesting to watch. Hocevar does need to keep in mind that Heim is not racing for a championship, and he is. Hendrick Motorsports troubles continue. Larson looked really fast before wrecking out, and he had an awful points day. Chase Elliott has an awful points day. William Byron kind of just looked eh. Hendrick Motorsports continues to struggle. And it hasn't been as much about speed recently. Like earlier in the year, I think it was a little bit speed, and I think William Byron is still having trouble with pure speed. But it seems like they're starting to bring speed more consistently, and the problem for them now is now they just can't keep themselves out of record, keep themselves out of danger. Elliott and Larson had bad days, and a little bit later on, you're going to see just why those bad days were so important in the greater landscape of the points battle. Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one of the most famous racing institutions in the world. It's a lovely facility. And it's funny because like NASCAR has a lot of people that show up for those races, but the grandstands aren't close to anywhere being full, and that's partially because of how many seats it has. But there's an issue in Indy, and the racing is not good. I don't know if it's as much Indy as much as it's the next gen car. I think you can still have good races at Indy, but to be half a tenth faster than somebody a lap and not be able to pass them is absolutely awful. Not a lot of green flag passing after restarts at Indy, unless there's usually it happens if somebody gets into a wall or there's something severely wrong with their car. And you saw it, just in the last run of the race. Chase Briscoe was holding everybody up in fourth. I mean, he was bleeding time to the leaders, and there was multiple faster cars behind him, and they couldn't get around him. You saw Corey Heim be able to block both Christopher Bell and Joey Logano, who were both faster for the last, 10, 15, 20 laps of the race. So Indy needs to do something. There's not a lot of green flag passing, or NASCAR really needs to do something, especially for a crown jewel event. You would think that it would be more competitive. Indy was also the championship race for the in-season tournament. It was Ryan Blaney and Todd Gilliland, and Ryan Blaney was faster and better all day, was ahead of Todd Gilliland all day. And then John Hunter Nemechek decides to make a terrible move, and it gets Ryan Blaney into the wall. Ryan Blaney not out of the race, but he's wrecked, has to go to pit road. Car obviously messed up, has to go to the back, and Todd Gilliland does just enough in a day where he was very clearly not very good to win the in-season tournament as a big upset. So congratulations to Front Row Motorsports and Todd Gilliland. This tight points battle, in reference to Hendrick struggling and Elliott and Larson having bad days, there is a very tight points battle from 5th to 10th. Everybody's saying you need to be in those top 6 spots when the reset happens to have a chance. Well, there's a lot of cars fighting for 5th and 6th, and I'll just leave it at that. You'll see it a little bit later on. But incredibly interesting. The top 3 are kind of pulling away. Ty Gibbs is kind of there, kind of in his own league. And then you get to the rest of everybody else in points. NASCAR also announced going into effect this week that there will be changes to stage breaks and how they relate to cautions. And because it seems like they're hearing the complaining, and I've done a little bit myself, about the amount of caution laps and the amount of time wasted in races on cautions. And it seems like this maybe could help fix it. And also maybe in the future it can help change some of the, oh, there's a wreck with 8 laps left in the stage. We're going to go back green flag racing with 3 laps. Everybody, the field's going to get jumbled up, and you're going to have guys that don't take tires. And, the stage racing shouldn't make it easier to do some of that stuff. It shouldn't help undeserving teams get to the front. That kind of stuff. So I like this change. I think it'll help with the commercials. I think it'll help a little bit with some of those end of stage cautions where the field really gets jumbled up on strategy. Not that different strategy is a bad thing, but it's a lot different when you know that stage break is coming and you know it's coming with 10 laps or 5 laps after you go green. So I like these new stage breaks and cautions. I believe the way the rule works, if you're within 10 laps of a stage break and a caution comes out, they just declare that the end of the stage and move forward, if my understanding is correct. Let's get into the history at Iowa. There's only been 2 cup races at Iowa. Iowa is a short track. I believe it is a 3/4 of a mile short track. And the 2 winners since NASCAR went back racing here in 2024, Ryan Blaney and William Byron. Makes sense. Both of those guys usually are pretty good on short tracks. Best average finish, William Byron at 1.5. Ryan Blaney at 2.5. Brad Keselowski, a guy that is in need of a good run, 6.5. Alex Bowman and Joey Logano tied at an average finish of 7.5. Ford struggled all year, but you see 3 of the top 5 drivers in average finish are Fords. Maybe Ford can put something together this week. Top 5s, 2 drivers have a top 5 both time, and if you look at best average finish, it should tell you who it is, Ryan Blaney and William Byron. 6 drivers have 1 top 5. Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, Brad Keselowski, Ricky Stenhouse, Ryan Preece, and Chase Elliott. Most top 10, 5 drivers have gotten a top 10 every time they have come to Iowa, which is just twice. William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano. 10 drivers tied at 1. Austin Dillon, Carson Hocevar, Ryan Preece, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, Ricky Stenhouse, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Josh Berry, and Christopher Bell. Again, not a lot of history to go off of, but these are the stats. Some big names, including the top 2 leaders in points, are nowhere to be found here. Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. I do think for at least one of those guys that changes this weekend. Let's get into the favorites to win in Iowa this weekend. Team Penske, I think, has got to be the favorite. Historically, they've just been good at this type of short track. Blaney has looked good here. Logano has looked good here. Logano has the most recent short track win at North Wilkesboro. It looks like Ford and Team Penske are, this part of the schedule should play right into their hands, and I think Team Penske has the most speed this week. Joe Gibbs Racing is usually good at short tracks. They've been good at short tracks this year. I would say they've been one of the top 2 teams at every single short track NASCAR has gone to, if not the top team. I think that continues this week. Hendrick Motorsports, I have 3rd. It looks like they're consistently gaining speed every week. Chase Elliott loves these short type of tracks. I would argue Chase Elliott was the 2nd best car at North Wilkesboro just a couple weeks ago. But the issue was he got screwed on strategy and never got his lap back. But he was one of the fastest cars on the track, especially if you look at that last long green flag run. Kyle Larson is good on short tracks. William Byron has won here and just last year and loves short tracks. This could be the week Hendrick Motorsports puts it all together, and I like their odds here. 23XI has been fast all year. Toyota's been fast all year. That's why Joe Gibbs and 23XI have done so well in the points. I do think both that Toyota brings more speed than they normally do to short tracks, especially 23XI. Historically, they have struggled at short tracks. Tyler Reddick doesn't have good numbers in Iowa, and since he's gotten the 23XI, his short track numbers have been kind of average, just not great. And I think Reddick needs a good run. Bubba Wallace has done a little bit better on the short tracks than Reddick, but I think 23XI still brings some speed. And my fifth team, I really, really wanted to put down RFK. They have good numbers here. They're Fords. They've done good at this type of track, and I think RFK will do well. I think they might have multiple drivers push for a top 10, but Spire seems to have their short track program figured out as well, especially Carson Hocevar. And while I think RFK might end up with more cars in the top 10, I think Spire has a better chance to win solely on the back of Carson Hocevar. And this is favorites to win, not favorites to have a good day. Therefore, I have Spire Motorsports at 5. Driver rankings, 2 of the top 3 are Penske Motorsports. I have Ryan Blaney as the favorite to win this week, continue to chop down the lead, chop the lead down of Denny Hamlin and even Tyler Reddick in second in front of him in the point standings. Give me William Byron, number 2. He's outside the top 10, guys, and it's August. He's outside the top 10 in points. This could go a long way to getting him back up the ladder, or at least starting a last-minute climb up the ladder. You want to be in that top 6. I don't know if it's going to be possible for him or yet. He would have to go absolutely crazy, but he can still close the gap, and who knows, if you enter the chase hot, maybe you don't have to be in that top 6. Joey Logano, back-to-back good races, an off week, but I don't think the momentum cools down. I think Logano has another really good week and continues his march back up the point standings. Chase Elliott, I mentioned how fast he was at North Wilkesboro. It was just a strategy call and that he could never get his lap back. I think Chase Elliott and Hendrick Motorsports, this is exactly what they want, and they're going to need a good week with how close of a points battle they are in for position. Christopher Bell has done well in these types of tracks. Christopher Bell likes short tracks. He's still looking for that first win of the year. I think that 20 car is going to have some speed in it. And as you can see, my 5, 6, 7, and 8 favorites are all Joe Gibbs Racing. Toyota in the 2 races in Iowa has not won. Joe Gibbs Racing is usually decent on short tracks, and Toyota's dominated this season, so I feel like they should have an edge of some sort. Ty Gibbs loves short tracks. I think he'll be up there. Denny Hamlin hasn't had a good day at Iowa yet in the 2 years, but Denny Hamlin is a known short track commodity. I think Denny Hamlin's going to be able to figure out Iowa eventually. I think he's going to find some speed. And he's just his non-drafting oval track average finish this year is like 3.5, which you got to think eventually that drops down. But it just goes to show you how good he is on ovals. The non-drafting ovals, not that he's bad on drafting ovals, but there's a little bit more chaos involved that can ruin your numbers. Denny Hamlin is the points leader. He's a short track guy. He's not going to struggle at Iowa forever. You couple that in with how good Toyota's been this year, and I think Denny Hamlin, despite not having the numbers, should be good this week. Chase Briscoe, another one of the last of the JGR cars that I expect to have speed. Finished second here last year. He's been good on short tracks with Joe Gibbs Racing for the most part. He was good at North Wilkesboro, which is the most recent short track race. Chase Briscoe is used to Iowa from the Xfinity Series when he was coming up. They used to race there quite a bit. I think Chase Briscoe has another good day. Somebody else that, after a slow start, is they're marching their way up the point standings. Carson Hocevar has been good on short tracks. Spire Motorsports has been good on short tracks, and I think it'll be no different for Carson Hocevar, who is currently 5th with Spire Motorsports in the point standings. What does that tell you about what kind of season the 77 team is having? And then I brought up RFK earlier. Brad Keselowski is going to be my last favorite to win at 10th, going to be that last option. RFK has been good here. Brad Keselowski has been good here. Ford has been good here. Brad's on the wrong side of the cut line. He needs to finish strong, and I think he starts strong here at Iowa towards the end of the season. Give me Brad Keselowski. Moving on to the regular season standings, there are 4 drivers that have clinched. If you see a driver with a star next to their name, it means they have already clinched and they will be in the playoffs. My yellow, if you see yellow, it means I believe they are a championship contender. I added Ryan Blaney to that group. If you see orange, which there's now only one orange driver, I've changed a lot of the colors here. If you see orange like you do for Ty Gibbs, it means I think that they're better than the rest of the field behind them, but I don't quite think they're in that championship contender tier, but they're close. That's where I have Ty Gibbs. This pink purple color means are all guys that I think if they start if they can get to the right place on points, if they can start in that top 6 or that top 5, are guys that I think, could win the championship. They're not as big favorites as the guys in front of them, but they have the ability to be fast. They've shown speed, and they're with a good enough organization. And there's a lot of pink guys that are jockeying for spots right now. The green are people that I think should make the chase and have had good seasons, but I don't think they're serious championship threats. And then the red is guys that are making up the cut line. Right now, the cut line has some big separation. But I think they're just happy to make it in, and I don't think that they are a serious championship threat. So let's go through that now that I told you the colors. 1, 2, and 3. Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, and Ryan Blaney are my championship contenders. They're the ones I have in yellow. Denny Hamlin with 4 wins is at 842 points. Tyler Reddick is 68 back after this cold stretch. And Ryan Blaney is now 19 back of Reddick and 87 back of Denny Hamlin at 755. That's kind of that top tier. Ty Gibbs is in a tier in his own. The only orange tier driver that I have, 708 points. He's 126 back of Denny Hamlin. He has also clinched, but he's only 39 points back of Ryan Blaney. So maybe he, with a couple good weeks, can catch up to the guys in front of him. Carson Hocevar all the way up to 5th after that, let's just say, interesting Indy or Brickyard 400, that very interesting Indy race with some guys wrecking, some guys doing better. Carson Hocevar got good stage points. He had a solid finish. He was one of the better cars at Indy. He goes all the way up to 5th in points at 638. Chase Elliott, after a 37th place finish, only got 1 point, which is why Hocevar passed him. Chase Elliott is at 635, only 3 points back of Hocevar. Chase Briscoe was in 7th in points at 623, which is 12 back of Elliott and 15 back of Hocevar. All of this can easily be made up in one race. Kyle Larson is at 617 points, which is just 6 back of Briscoe, 18 back of Elliott, 18 back of Elliott, and 21 back of Hocevar. And then Buescher, 613, right there in the thick of things, just 4 back of Kyle Larson. And rounding out this jumbled group at 5 through 10 is Christopher Bell at 609, which means from 5th place to 10th place is only separated by 29 points, and that could flip-flop in a race. And really, they don't have much separation to the next group of drivers in 11th through 14th. But this 5 through 10 is going to be so crucial to watch these last couple weeks going to the playoffs. Everybody knows where you want to be. You have a young star in Hocevar. You have a former champions in Elliott and Larson. You have former championship 4 drivers back in the old format in Briscoe and Bell. And you have Chris Buescher, somebody who is no stranger to the playoffs. Crazy talented group of drivers driving for different teams and different manufacturers that are all jockeying for position in this area. And all of them need to get off to a good start at Iowa. I think you're going to see different drivers in different spots at the end of every week. I would not count on any of these drivers to stay put going forward. And out of those drivers, I was telling you the difference between pink and green. Hosevar, Elliott, Briscoe, Larson, and Bell are all in that pink group in this battle. I have Busher in the green group. I don't think he's a serious chase contender, but he has to be happy with the season he's having. In 11th place, I have my other green driver, somebody that I don't think can win the championship, but has to be happy with where they are. Daniel Suarez in 11th in points at 583. And then we get to three purple pink drivers that I think have the speed and ability, but they're way back on points and they need to make a run now. That's William Byron, Joey Logano, and Bubba Wallace. Logano has started that run. Logano actually just joined this group with his surge the last couple of races. Byron and Wallace have kind of been in this same situation. Byron is at 568, which is 15 back of Suarez in 11th. Logano is at 545, which is 23 back of Byron, so quite a bit of ground to make up to get into the top 10 from there. And then Bubba Wallace is 5 back of Logano. Then we get into the red, the cut line, guys that want to make the playoffs, but I don't think are dangerous if they get there. Shane Van Gisbergen in 15th at 537. He's only 3 points back of Bubba in 14th. And then a bigger drop off, 19 points to Austin Cindric, who is currently making up the last transfer spot at 16th. And then for 17th, 18th, and 19th, I am not marking how many points back of first place they are. I am marking how many points back of making the playoffs these guys are. Starting with Ryan Preece, who moved from 18th to 17th last week with a good run. Ryan Preece, minus 38 to the cut line. That's a lot of ground to make up and not a lot of time to do it. Eric Jones in 18th, he's minus 44. And then Brad Keselowski in 19th at minus 50. Those are the only three guys that I think have a real chance that aren't in the playoffs. I think we have 19 drivers. This race is down to 19 drivers. We have McDowell in 20th, but he's 76 back. Not enough time, I don't think, to make up that gap and pass that many drivers. But I think our field of 16, I said this last episode, our field of 16 might be set. It's not impossible for Preece, Jones, or Keselowski to make their way back in, but it's going to take an incredible couple of weeks from one of them or somebody to be really, really unlucky at the back. And finally, what I always end these episodes with, my updated power rankings based on my own personal ranking system and how I feel like doing it. The top two have been the same forever, Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick, 1, 2. Gibbs showed a lot of speed at Indy, didn't win. Part of it obviously was fuel strategy, but Gibbs I have passing Blaney. That could flip-flop after this week. Those top four are kind of in that top four for now by themselves. And then the rest of the group, I have Hosevar at 5 after a solid speed showing and moving up to 5th. Chase Briscoe at 6th after another top 5 finish. He's been stacking them together this summer just like last summer. Christopher Bell, another runner-up finish. At some point, Bell has to find victory lane. He's not going to stay winless forever. Too much talent and too good of a car. Chase Elliott, after a 37th place finish, drops all the way down to 8th. Chris Buescher down to 9th. He's kind of just holding on outside of the top 10, just like his points position. Kyle Larson, after another bad race, he still continues his drop in points, and he is down to 10th on the power rankings. Despite showing some speed last week, he can't wreck out like that. Logano all the way up to 11th, the highest he's been in a while. Daniel Suarez down to 12th. Byron stays at 13. Van Gisbergen 14. Bubba Wallace 15th. Bubba Wallace started the season really well. Got off to that cold stretch. I thought he was turning it around, but they still sometimes, that 23 car team still sometimes has too many mistakes that I think cost them. They're in 15 in the power rankings. Cindric at 16. Preece at 17, Keselowski at 18. So you see the two of the three RFK cars right on the cusp of the points. I have them right on the cusp of the point of the top 16 in the power rankings. How hot can they get? Eric Jones falls to 19th and McDowell stays in 20th. That's all I have for you guys this week. Going out to the cornfields of Iowa. Put in the comments below who you think wins this week. What you think happened. Who do you think gets those deeply coveted top 6 spots with just a couple weeks in the season. Who wins at Iowa? And how do you feel about Heim and Hocevar? Whose side are you on in that conflict? Let me know in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Find a couch this week. Watch some sports. This is kind of a dry area, but we're in August, which means football is here. Really, the first preseason game was played. The Hall of Fame game was played this week for the NFL. Football is coming this month in college, preseason for the NFL. But find a couch, watch some sports before football takes up most of your life. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of your family. It's a crazy world out there, guys. Peace out.